Hey everyone, welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Rube, how you doing?
Doing well. It was hot at practice.
It was a little toasty at practice. The
Like
Eagles
training
actually
camp.
practiced on Thursday. They had a walkthrough on Wednesday. They'll practice again Friday. And then Saturday, they head down to New Orleans for a big Week 3 matchup.
Yeah, and kind of being out there on a Thursday, it just strikes you how short a week it is. You know, they just played. I mean, they didn't get out. They didn't leave the stadium until Tuesday morning. We're here Thursday, and they leave in 2 days for New Orleans. These are really, really tough turnarounds, especially on the heels of the Brazil trip. I think it takes a while to recover from that. So there's a lot to overcome, in addition to all the other stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah, there's plenty to overcome on the field, certainly. No A.J. Brown at practice again today. Looking very likely he's going to miss this game. We'll see what happens in Week 4 against Tampa. You have the bye week right after that, so it could go either way. And then I didn't see C.J. Gardner-Johnson at practice. I don't have more on that. We might get an injury report while we're still recording this. If we do, I'll update everyone, but did not see him.
Yeah.
Johnny Wilson was at practice. He wasn't participating. He was off on a side field doing a little bit of work. He played in that last game through a hamstring injury.
Yeah. Still, it's a precarious situation at that position, at a couple of positions. They don't have a ton of depth at safety either.
That's true. Let's get into it today. We talked to all three coordinators. We talked to Nick Sirianni on Wednesday since the last podcast. We have matchups to look forward to in this game against the Saints, and then we have some questions at the end. But Rube, since this is the first time we're doing a podcast since hearing from Nick Sirianni on Wednesday, for one more time, let's go back to the game and the fourth quarter situation, because Nick was given an opportunity to explain himself and he gave his perspective. I still very much disagree with him, but what did you make of his reasoning for why he went for the field goal instead of going for it on fourth down?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the one hand, at least he had an explanation. I'm with you. I didn't agree with it. He threw a bunch of numbers out there that are accurate based on a very small percentage of plays in that situation. I just thought it was the wrong move.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did. And so he said that when he got back into the office Tuesday morning, he asked the analytics team to look for other teams who had been in a similar situation in recent history. So they did. It's a very small sample size. I think Nick looks at it as if it's very vindicating. I don't see it that way.
I think when you only have a handful of plays, it's not a big enough body of work, a big enough sample size, like you said, to have any real meaning.
Yeah. So basically what it was the parameters of this search within the last 5 years, but really the last 4 and a couple of games. It went back to 2020, under 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, inside an opponent's 34-yard line, and with you up 1 to 5 points. So it is a very specific situation they were in. And I understand why it has to be that specific, because anything else doesn't really
changes the logic.
Exactly. So there were 15 instances. One of them was a 4th and 13. It was the Steelers. They were basically just running out the clock with a long play. 12 of them were 4th and 1s, which is a very different situation. It's a situation they could have been in potentially if they ran a different play on third down, but we're not taking that into account right now. There were 2 that were similar. One was the 2022 Texans went for a 4th and 3 against the Cowboys from the Dallas 3-yard line. So a little different there. They failed. The Cowboys drove the field, scored a touchdown, won the game. The other one was the 2022 Jets. They were up 4. They went for it on a 4th and 2 against the Bucs from the Tampa 2-yard line with 2:17 left and failed. The Bucs drove down the field and scored. The one thing I will say about those 2 situations, the quarterbacks were Jeff Driscoll and Zach Wilson.
And that changes the equation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, quite a bit. And then, just Nick saying that his chart, like he kind of intimated that he went against the traditional chart there, or what the analytics suggested him to do, and he went with the feel thing. That's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I don't even know what my takeaway is from it. you know, I don't know what it proves that he's looking this up after the fact. I don't know how that vindicates him. I mean, if you believe in the process, then you know this stuff before, maybe not that specifically, but before the drive, you know, kind of what you want to do. I don't like the fact that it was after they lost. Now he's looking it up. I don't know. That bothered me a little bit.
And even looking it up, like, I don't know why that's vindicating, because you're not trying to do what everyone else is doing. You're trying to gain an advantage. That's the whole point of using analytics, is to win on the margins where other teams are doing stuff that the analytics says is stupid.
Right.
You're trying to gain that advantage. So, yeah, I think look, I understand. At least he gave us a reason, but I think his logic is faulty.
Yeah. And I know you made a great point the other day about the difference between being up 3 and being up 6. You know, you're up 3. The Falcons are most likely going to go for the tie. They're going to go for the 3, which is an advantage to you.
Yeah, like typically, and I don't want to say the worst case scenario, because there's a chance that they're moving the ball so well they try to score anyway.
Sure.
But you're kind of thinking worst case there is they kick a field goal, you go to overtime, you still have a 50-50 shot to
overtime at home.
Yeah. You're probably the better team.
Yeah.
You invite the possibility of them scoring a touchdown to win the game.
Yeah, you're basically telling them to go for the game winner, not the tie.
And Nick said he didn't see it that way, and that's his perspective. He said, as an offensive coach, he knows how hard it is when you have the pressure to try to score a touchdown. So, I mean,
didn't bother the Falcons much.
It didn't. And Bob, I've never been an offensive coordinator.
36-year-old Kirk Cousins wasn't feeling any pressure.
Yeah, he wasn't feeling any pressure in the greater sense or pressure on the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it, just a little curious that was his logic behind it. And honestly, we talked about Nick before. I think he skews conservative. I think that it's like if he were left to his own devices, he would be conservative way more often. He isn't. I mean, in this team with the Eagles franchise, he is not conservative. Like, numbers say he's pretty aggressive, but I think that's based on what the franchise wants, not what he wants.
I don't think he knows what he wants. I don't think he knows whether he's aggressive or not. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. And it's hard to tell what's, driving him in one direction or the other.
Well, we certainly know what the front office wants.
Sure.
And what ownership wants.
Yeah. No doubt.
So it makes sense that for the most part, they are kind of an aggressive team. I think that falls in line with what ownership wants. I'm not going to say I want to be a fly on the wall again like I did on Tuesday, but I do wonder what Jeff Lurie thought of all this.
And by the way, I appreciate all the commentary on the fly on the wall conversation.
Was there a lot?
There was a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I also got a lot of backup that musicals stink, which I appreciate.
I did see that. Yeah, but doesn't change it in my mind. Okay. I do have my list of my top 100 musicals of all time here.
We'll run that down just after the show ends.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure he knows what he wants to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a problem. Kind of all started with Doug in 16. Just because they were so bad, he was just aggressive just for the hell of it, and it worked. And then in 17, he kept doing it.
Well, in 7, but I really do think it's an organizational philosophy to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Especially when you think you have good talent on offense.
But I think the fourth down thing is more of a recent, Jeff Lurie's been the owner for 25 years, but I don't think Ray Rhodes was going for it on fourth down. I think it's kind of a relatively new.
It is, but I think it's spearheaded by a more prominent analytics community in general, and certainly in that building.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think Jeff has changed in that. I think that's how I think he's kind of evolved that way. But because Jeffrey's
always looking to win on the margins.
Yeah, he is.
That's what a good franchise should do.
10 years ago, people weren't going for it on 4th and 4 from their own 50. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't happening. Now it's like, you just go for it. But anyway, I'm glad he spoke about it. I'm glad he opened up about it and shared his thinking in great detail. I still disagree.
I do too. I guess we'll leave it at that, but it's something to keep in mind as we go through. It's a long season. Game management is his big thing on game day and really during the week. So
doesn't have much else.
If he's not succeeding there, then I think it's troubling.
Yeah. And, he also talked a little bit, he was asked about the whole process, like who's, and I'm still not sure how it works. Like who's making that call to go forward? Who's calling that play? Who's saying run or pass? Is it Kellen? Is it Nick? Because you can't have that conversation before every play. And his
and
answer.
Also, like the answer that they're doing all this during the week.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Is
some
invalid
of that's true, but it's impossible to go through every single
scenario.
There's too many variables.
Yeah. And that's what I was getting at, is that like you can have a philosophy, like we want to go for it on whatever 4th and 1 from anywhere. But to think that they have every scenario plotted out, I don't buy that. So who's making that call? And I don't know. He didn't answer that, but
it better be him.
I kind of think it's him.
It should be him. But he's the head coach.
He's the head coach. But then you have like he's deciding to go for it, and then Kellen's calling the play. It's just
I think in a moment like that, he has to sign off on the type of play.
I would think so too. Yeah. But the clock's running. You're trying to. Yeah. I'm not.
Well, they did have a time. There was a timeout before that. So
and that particular one, on that particular one there was, but particularly on that particular one there was. But I just mean in general, you can't always have that conversation.
Yeah. That's where I think it helps to have the OC and the head coach really in lockstep,
or the same person.
Yeah. So you hope they're in lockstep then.
Yeah.
That's all I had from Nick. I don't want to keep going over. I'm sure there are some people who are like, move on from this. How much do I have to hear about game strategy? But it was big in that game. And with 15 games left in the season, game strategy is going to pop up again.
Sure is.
So it's something.
Especially if every game you play is close.
Which they probably all won't be.
When's the last time they played a game that wasn't close? Well, they got blown out. But when's the last time they won a game that wasn't close? The Giants game wasn't close at the end of but when's the last time they won a game by like more than a touchdown, more than one possession? It was the Dolphins week 7 last year. So a lot of high leverage decisions being made.
That's kind of fun in a way, because I in some senses, I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod or elsewhere, that Dolphins team, it was a relatively small sample size, and that offense was like setting the world on fire. And you were wondering if it was like real.
Yeah.
Like how is it really the best offense of all time? It's only been 2 games for these Saints.
Yeah. And
what they're doing is really impressive, but it's such a small sample.
Yeah. I think the difference for me, the Dolphins, like what did they score against the Broncos? Like 70?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of skewed all the stats.
Yeah. But
they did it against Carolina and Dallas, and Dallas looked like they quit.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what they do. Usually they wait till the postseason to do that. But, it's certainly, I would not be shocked if this game was played in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not like the Saints are going to score 40 points every game. They are very talented, though.
All right. Let's get to the coordinators. Huh?
Yeah.
We talked to Vic Fangio. There were some takeaways. He wasn't, I don't think, as honest as he normally is in this presser. I think that because of the way things went, it's going to change his tone a little bit.
Yeah.
He put it a little bit on himself, certainly.
A little bit.
Said he has to coach it better. I asked him flat out if he has enough talent on the defensive line. He said yes. And I said, why do you think that? And he said, because I've seen them do it. All right. Bryce Huff is still the starter, but he also mentioned they're going to mix and match after that.
He did.
Yeah, Bryce Huff will play the first snap of the game. That'll be a first down. How many more first downs do you think he plays in this game?
If he plays the first one and like they get 13 yards on it, or, I think it's trending that he's not going to be playing on first down.
I tried to give Huff the benefit of the doubt, and I went back and watched. It's bad.
It's bad. It's
really bad. Like, against the run, they're picking on him. He's getting washed out by tight ends.
Yeah.
And then in the pass game, like in pass rush, it just doesn't have it right now.
Yeah.
That's more surprising. If you were to tell me like he's going to get washed out against the run, okay, he hasn't really done it much. We thought there'd be a learning curve there, but he's not even providing what we thought the baseline would be.
Yeah, and I wonder how much that's related to being asked to do more. Like if you're being asked to do things you can't really do, does that hurt you in the areas that you've traditionally been good at? I wonder these things. A
little bit of that. I think a little different philosophy.
Confidence too.
Oh, sure. I think his confidence is definitely lacking right now.
Yeah.
I talked to him after the game. I mean, he knows how much pressure there is on him, and he has to deliver. But I also think like the philosophy of what they're being asked to do up front, even on pass downs, is a little different than what he's used to. So, but right now, I mean, honestly, I was like, maybe it's not as bad. And then you turn on the tape, and like the second play of the game, he slips,
Yeah.
and he falls. It's just.
There was one play where I think it was in the second quarter where the running back was going by him and he just like waved at him. Did you see that?
There was another play where the running back gets by him and he's fixing his helmet as he runs after him.
Saw that, yeah.
I mean, I guess it's not as bad as Jamon Brown fixing his glove.
The play was still live.
Play was still live.
Yeah.
And like, look, if you can't see, you got to fix your helmet. I get it, but it just looked bad.
It looked terrible.
Yeah, I'm really worried about Bryce Huff.
It's fair.
It's only 2 games in, so it's not like we're sounding alarms, but what we've seen through 2 games is not good. And I've gotten a lot of people say, well, think back to Hassan Reddick early on. He didn't have a sack for a couple games. Everyone was worried about him.
His hand was hurt too.
His hand was hurt. There was a real reason. And there were enough good signs from Hassan Reddick in that early sample size to think he's going to turn it on.
Yeah.
There really haven't been many good signs from Bryce Huff.
And he had more of a body of work than, I mean, Huff had 10 sacks last year, but Reddick had a couple seasons at that point with double-digit sacks. But yeah, the hand was really obviously bothering him. Yeah, it's a concern. I don't know if it's my biggest concern on defense. I still think Jalen Carter is. And who's the most disappointing guy, you know, like between Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith? Because we've seen Jalen, like Nolan Smith and Jordan Davis just haven't been productive for 2 years. Jordan Davis for 3 years, but Jalen Carter's regressed. And maybe it's.
I don't think it's fair to say he's regressed.
I haven't seen him do the kind of things he was doing last year. I know he's getting double teamed.
I'm not in the business of making excuses for Jalen Carter, but
he had the hiccups. I know.
No, I mean that we can talk about that a little bit. Jeff McClain from the Inquirer reported he was late for a team function last week. That's why I mentioned on the last pod that he was not in there for the first series, and it was definitely odd, and that's why he was disciplined. That's not good. I mean, it seems like there's always something with him, and you want full buy-in from a guy who's supposed to be your most important defensive player. So if he's screwing up like that, it's troubling. On the field, week 1 he's getting doubled and they're on an ice rink. Week 2 he's facing one of the best guards in the league. Do you want to see him win more of those one-on-ones? Absolutely. But he's not going to face a Chris Lidstrom every single week.
Well, if he wants to be the defensive MVP, then make a play against Chris Lidstrom. Make a play.
I'm not saying he shouldn't make a play, but I also don't know if it's fair to say he's regressed after 2 weeks.
Well, I guess, I don't know if that's the wrong word. To me, he has. I just haven't seen it from him. I haven't seen any sign of him being the player he was last year.
He had some good rushes in week 1. You didn't think so?
A couple.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple. Out of those 3, who are you most concerned about?
But who are the 3? I'm sorry.
The 3 Georgia first-round picks.
Jordan Davis. Just because of different reasons, I guess. With Jalen Carter, I still have a lot of confidence he's going to be a good player this year. With Nolan Smith, they have guys ahead of him. You would love to see him take on a bigger role, but in theory, you have Sweat and you have Huff and you still have Brandon Graham. They don't have another 350-pound nose tackle. And if Jordan Davis is not as good against the run as you need him to be, I'm not even talking about pass rush at this point.
No.
And he's not the only guy who struggled against the run. It was pretty much everyone along the front. And give the Falcons credit. They did a lot of that to put them in tough positions. But Jordan Davis is here to stop the run. And if he can't even do that, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
That's why he's the most concerning.
Yeah.
But you would say Carter?
I keep going back and forth. I mean, I guess I found myself saying it's not Nolan because he was the 30th pick and the other 2 guys were high picks, but like 30th pick's pretty high pick. I kind of agree. I mean, I think Jalen in the long run is going to be a really good player. I don't like what I've seen. And I think it all goes into it, the being late from whatever it was. And I don't know. I haven't seen what I wanted to see from him. Maybe you throw out the first game because of the field. We'll see. We'll see what he does in the next couple games before the bye. But none of those guys.
And even like Milton, who had the sack, even he really struggled against the run in this game. So he makes the one big play, which you give him credit for. It was a great rush, and it was against Lindstrom. So if you're saying that Carter should do more, fair.
Yeah.
But then Milton was getting just moved around too easy in the run game.
Yeah, and I just think if you want to be the MVP of the defensive MVP of the league, it shouldn't matter what guard
you're not calling it Defensive Player of the Year anymore.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
I just want to see more from him. I don't know.
I'm more confident that you will.
Okay.
Than the other two.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely am more confident I will from him than the other two. But it says more about the other two than it says about Jalen.
Okay.
The three of them have one. They have one tackle. They have one tackle in 215 combined snaps. Thomas Booker has 3 tackles and 17 snaps.
Play Thomas Booker more. You know what's funny? I think I mentioned this, that my Q&A last week was about Thomas Booker playing tennis.
Yeah.
And how that helps him with his lateral movement.
Mm-hmm.
I picked a really good week to do that because he was really good laterally in that game.
Yeah, his serving to the ad court I thought was terrific.
No, but did you see that? Like his ability to.
Yeah, that's true.
Because a lot of those zone runs, like those outside zone runs, you have to get there. You have to really.
He's quick.
Stay square and get there, and he was able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how much more he can play.
Try it.
Might have a choice. Yeah,
I'd try it.
He's a futures contract guy. I mean, and he's outplaying those guys. I'm gonna say outplaying, but
he did. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
He outplayed them.
He did.
And in limited reps, so you don't know if it's not fair to like extrapolate that over a bigger sample size, but possible.
Yeah.
Other stuff from Vic Fangio. He was asked. I thought the question about the blitz was interesting because he sent that zero blitz that was the long play. I think it was like a frustration blitz from him. He's like, these guys aren't getting home. I'm going to send it. But he was asked like, because in the summer he said, you want to blitz when you want to blitz. You don't want to blitz because you feel like you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asked about that specific play. And he said it was about 50-50, which I think tells you, he's looking at the pass rushers like, these guys aren't getting home. I've got to send some pressure. And then I asked him about stunts because they were kind of a mess.
I'm going to interrupt you. Remember Shane Steichen was talking about how there was one defensive coordinator and he had picked up on a tendency that he had when, and I'm trying to remember the details, but he knew when he would blitz based on he would get frustrated because something happened, like if they gave up a long third down, and he would always blitz the next play out of frustration.
Yeah.
And they would take advantage of it because they knew it was
there
coming.
are like some coaches that'll do that. It's the old frustration blitz.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to put that on tape too much.
No, you don't. You don't.
But then I also asked him about stunts and he says similar, like you don't want to have to use stunts all the time. You want to do it when you dictate it. The problem is right now their pass rush is so poor that those things could become answers just to try to generate some pass rush, whether it's a blitz or a sim blitz or a stun up front. Like you got to do something.
Yeah.
It's either got to be wrinkles like that, or it's got to be new players, or the players that you have in there have to show up more.
Yeah. And I think it's got to be a combination of those things. I mean, I don't know where you're going to get new players at this point. He talked about the run defense a lot. He was asked about that several times in several ways. And he kept saying, it's on me. I got to put him in a better position. But he also allowed, they've got to be better too. Mm-hmm. And you could tell that's really what he wanted to say.
What did you make of his answer about the youth and relative inexperience on defense? Because there are a few different questions about, Bryce Huff has this new role. Zach Bond, kind of relatively new at linebacker, taking all those cut blocks. And Lindstrom in this game was incredible getting to the linebacker and just those blocks are unbelievable, those cut blocks. So he's getting used to that. You have all these new pieces kind of getting used to the roles. My question was, is this team like too inexperienced right now? And in a roundabout way, he said, yeah, a little bit.
Hey, it seemed like something he hadn't really thought about, and he was kind of processing it. Quignon, obviously a rookie. Cooper didn't play.
Which, honestly, one of the spots it's been okay.
Yeah.
He had a bad rep on the last drive. But
yeah, really, really bad. But It is. I mean, it is a concern, and it is showing up. I think that they're inexperienced, and some of their experienced guys are in new positions, new roles. I mean, Kobe, has only started 6 games in his career. So yeah, you have that much youth. I mean, you've talked about how CJ is still new as a safety. He's another one. Yeah, he seemed to, as he was answering, he seemed to agree more and more as he answered.
Yeah, that's all I had from him. Kellen Moore talked a little bit. I don't have a ton of updates there from him. I did ask him about the RPOs and the ineligible men down the field penalties. And
it's easy for you to say.
No, it's not. I mean, that's a difficult situation because the RPO game is a big deal for them, but penalties can't keep happening.
Yeah.
And he talked about that. He said, we don't want to throw away all that stuff because it's valuable for our offense, but that can't keep happening. And it's really tough because if players are like, if this is a run play, we need to get some push, but you have such a limited window where you can get down the field. You really can't get down the field at all. They're going to call it now. And now that they've put it on tape, you get 3 in one game. The refs know that.
Yeah.
The other team knows that. The other team's saying, hey, watch these guys on the RPOs. They're getting downfield. Make sure you call that. I'd be shocked if Dennis Allen before this game doesn't, tell them like, hey, keep an eye on those linemen.
Yeah, there's no question. And refs know what teams are being called for. I mean, they have reports and all that stuff. They know what teams are committing a lot of DPIs, what teams are holding, and they'll be on the lookout for it. Personal fouls, what players maybe have had a couple personal fouls.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, they know that already, mostly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They know all that stuff. So something to keep an eye on. They got to fix it.
I asked him about Jahan Dotson. And just, speaking of new on defense, he's really new on offense. Hasn't had a lot of time. I know you caught up with Dotson. What did he have to say about all that?
He said it's hard. He said, he feels like he's made really good progress with Jalen, but he said it's hard. You're in a camp. He said, I was in Washington's camp, the entire camp. So you're just trained to think a certain way and speak a certain language. And he said it's hard. That's why you do extra work. He said, Jalen and I just are having conversations constantly about the offense and about, just trying to be on the same page. I mean, he's only had 2 targets and he just had 1 catch the other day for 6 yards. He feels like he's ready to have a bigger role, but it just hasn't happened. And I think, Jalen and he can have all the conversations in the world. If Jalen doesn't trust him, he's not going to throw him the ball. So.
And Jalen's really big on, we've seen this the last few years. He has to trust you to throw you the football. That was kind of always the issue with Jack Stoll as like the second tight end. Like Jack Stoll would be wide open. He's like waving his hands and Jalen's like, no.
And Covey, he trusts Covey and Covey gets 6 balls. So yeah. But they need Dotson. I mean, they need to get him going to some extent. It doesn't have to be 70, 80 yards, but it would just make this offense flow better if he catches a few balls.
Yeah, and that's why they traded for him. It wasn't just to be the third receiver. It was for this exact scenario where he has to play some starter reps. Not ideal that it comes in week 2 and week 3.
No, it's a problem, but he's a confident kid. He really believes that they're making progress. He said it's going to be all year. That process doesn't end if I catch a few balls. He said it's just going to be all year, trying to be more comfortable with Jalen, more comfortable in the offense, and make some plays.
I don't have much from Michael Clay. I did ask him about Jalix Hunt, who played his first snaps on special teams. He's going to have a big role there now without Patrick Johnson.
Yeah.
Clay said he graded out really well, and he actually forced the other one penalty they got on special teams. So he had a good showing for the first.
He should. I mean, he's got all the tools to be a really good special teamer.
Heck, if the defense keeps playing like this, we might see him out there too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, that was Jim Johnson's thing. If he saw a guy excelling on special teams, a defensive player, he would try him out on defense. He's like, well, he's got the athleticism and speed and whatever it takes to make plays on special teams. Let's give him a shot.
Before we take a break,
it's not like the other guys are getting it done.
certainly true. Before we take a break, I did have one other Vic Fangio note.
Yeah.
He mentioned that, yes, they changed the dime package. It's now Keely Ringo as that dime linebacker, which is why Cooper Jean barely played in the last game. I think he had one snap when Avante was banged up.
Right.
He is now purely the backup nickel, which in the short term kind of stinks for Eagles fans probably to not see Cooper DeJean out there. In the long term, it might not be a bad thing because I still think there's a really good chance that at some point this season he's a starting nickel.
Yeah, and I think, and Vic has said consistently since camp began that he wants guys focusing on one thing, and especially when it's a rookie, it's just easier just to focus on that. And I think he'll make more progress as the slot if he's only focusing on the slot.
Yeah, and it's a way to get Keely Ringo involved because he's now the second backup outside corner.
Right.
Probably not a lot of snaps to go around for him.
Right.
And if he's going to be up on game day, he's going to be a gunner on the punt team, and he's now going to be the dime linebacker.
Yeah, so it makes sense.
It does make sense, although we haven't really seen Keely play inside like that. He's mostly been a boundary corner, so a little fascinated about why they thought he could do it, but small sample size. He didn't get to play much.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on.
All right, let's take a break. We have matchups and questions on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, Rube, the Saints are 2-0. Week 1, they beat the Panthers 47-10. Week 2, they beat the Cowboys 44-19. So 91 points.
And they've scored on every drive that David Carr has been on the field for.
It's unbelievable right now.
Yeah.
They are playing at such a high level. Clint Kubiak looks like a real genius with what he's doing down there without a great offensive line.
Yeah.
Derek Carr looks really, really good right now. Alvin Kamara turned back the clock a little bit. They look good. They look legit.
Rashid Shaheed, who and Chris Olave. I think Rashid Shaheed had a big game against the Eagles when Olave was hurt, maybe last time they played. But yeah, they got so much talent, and on that surface, and I think the Dallas game was in Dallas, right? The Panthers game was home, but that's such a fast track. And I mean, that's one of the things that, Drew Brees was a great quarterback regardless of where he was playing, but he was the perfect QB for that field just because he was so accurate on the short stuff. He was like a 70% career guy. And he would just get those weapons the ball and watch him run up and down the field.
Yeah. Let's get into some of the matchups. We'll start with the Eagles on defense. The first thing has to be stopping the run. They're not going to get into passing situations if you don't stop the run. And Alvin Kamara's looked really good. A lot of similar schematic things to what we saw in the run game from this Atlanta team. A lot of outside zone. They're gonna stretch you.
Yeah, Vic said if they watch our film, I'm sure they'll do that. Kamara's leading the NFL in yards per carry, 5.7.
And the Eagles are dead last in yards per carry at 6.4.
Yeah, the 7th worst all time. It would be 6-7 if it wasn't for Kirk Cousins' kneel downs.
Mm-hmm.
Those count as rushing attempts. And this early in the season, there aren't that many. So
would you like to wipe that out?
No, I don't really have a strong feeling about that one way or the other. You're trying to get me going on.
No, I figured you might.
No, because you have to account for the yards somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just charge them to the team?
Whatever, if you like, yeah. But on StatHead, you can run stats with take out kneel downs. Yeah, which is a nice one of the few things I haven't gotten rid of that we.
You and I the other day really put StatHead to work.
We did.
StatHead is the Pro Football Reference stat site. That's where we get a lot of our searches from for like the purely quantitative data, right?
Yeah.
It's really good. But Nick ran through all the parameters, and he's walking off the podium like, now what was I'm making sure I get all the right parameters.
There was one, you had to ask him the time frame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But his stats were accurate. We up for debate what they mean, but at least the numbers were right. Anyway,
I've been diving into NFL Pro stats, which is like from the NFL, like the next gen stats, but it's all really sortable now. I spent way too much time, and then I told Alex, our producer, about it. He spent way too much time. A lot of fun stuff in there. I'm learning how to use it.
I have to check it out.
It's great. But in this game, Alvin Kamara, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to stop him. And he's a big home run hitter too. So if you're not slowing him down at the line of scrimmage, he can beat you.
Yeah, and that's been the problem is, whether it was Josh Jacobs or the two backs the other day, I mean, they were untouched. They were going 5, 6, 7 yards before any contact. And now you have safeties trying to tackle fast, big, strong, tough guys in the open field, and it's tough to do.
Yeah, especially when they have a head of steam. It's tough duty, and that's where the defensive line really needs to pull their weight a little bit more.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rashid Shaheed. He's a big play threat, man. He had a 59-yard touchdown catch in the opener, a 70-yarder in week 2. He's averaging 7.1 air yards per target.
17.1.
Right, what did I say?
7.1.
17.1 air yards per target right now. So he's their big play threat, and I still haven't gotten that injury report yet, but we'll see about CJ. But it's going to put stress on the defense.
Yeah, no question about it. He's a fun player. If he's not beating your team, he's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, I was watching some of the.
I believe he was undrafted, right?
I don't know that offhand. I can look that up for you.
Went to some small. They might have gone.
Went to Weber State,
alma mater of Rico Washington, NCAA rebounding leader from Philly.
Oh, also Sua Peta.
Yeah,
were they teammates? Sua was 2019.
Sua's older.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
He knows about Sua, though, I'm sure. They probably have Sua statues throughout
Sua's a
the
legend.
building. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember where Rico Washington went to high school in Philly. He was a great player. Rico Washington went to Gloucester County College. He went to Ben Franklin. And he never played there. Ron Mitchell, the coach there, you're just going to work on your grades. He stayed 2 years there, never played one game. I was covering them for the Gloucester County Times back then. And then Rico finally got to play at Weber State, led the country in rebounding. Philly guy. Died tragically, very young. Really sad. Anyway, little aside. Rico Washington, one of the greatest Philly public league players ever. Weber State, that's the common denominator. I'm sorry. But Rashid Shaheed undrafted, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's all I have on him. He's going to be tough to stop. Eagles edge rush against these tackles. And if they're just I'm curious to see what Kubiak does. He's been so good at moving the pocket.
They max protect,
but it's like, man, they run a lot of play action off of their really strong run game. And then the screen game has been working for them. And I think that's all to kind of mitigate their tackles because they're not very good.
Yeah.
But in this game, they might be able to just drop back and pass. I don't know how they're going to play this. I think they're going to stick with what's been working. So it might be a little frustrating for Sweat and Huff, but
they might not have good tackles, but nobody's getting close to Derek Carr. I mean, he's getting rid of the ball quickly, and it's tough to get near him.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been brilliant what Kubiak's been able to do down there. Fun to watch too. He's getting the most out of those guys. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable for an entire season, but they're off to a great start.
Yeah.
Just 10 pressures so far through 2 games on Derek Carr. Last in the league.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, no one's getting near him. So
I'm not real confident in that number going much higher.
Yeah. And I mentioned the play actions and screens. That puts stress on every level of the defense. I think this is a game where you're going to need your linebackers to play well. I don't know if they can.
Yeah, and that's where the screens really worry you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like this defense is really susceptible to big plays on screen games.
Yeah. You have any other thoughts on the Saints offense?
No, I mean, you just covered the whole thing.
Taysom Hill, too, is kind of an X factor for them.
Who's that?
Taysom Hill.
Oh, yeah. He's hurt. He might not play.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, he's been kind of lining up everywhere. Has he not practiced this week?
Yeah. I will have to see the injury report today, but I know he
has a chest injury.
Yeah.
missed practice on Wednesday. So we'll see. I mean, that would be a big loss for them. He's been doing a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a dangerous guy, and I like the way they use him.
Okay, I think that's all we have on the Saints offense. Want to flip to the Eagles offense?
Yeah.
I think the first one here is Jalen Hurts against obviously every part of that defense, but Tyrann Mathieu. Honey Badger can still play. He can still cover a lot of ground. And 2 of Jalen's 3 interceptions this year have been against really good safeties. He had Xavier McKinney pick him off in week 1, and he had Jesse Bates pick him off in week 2.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Boy, it'd be nice to see Jalen get through a game without getting picked off by a veteran safety.
Yeah, certainly. I think Mathieu is still a player that you have to kind of know where he is. One of my favorite players of the last decade.
Really?
I just like the way he plays. You can kind of play him anywhere.
Yeah.
You can play him at like the nickel. You can play him at the deep safety. You can play him in the box.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. He's got a little edge, plays with a little fire.
He's one of those guys who makes me feel old because I was such a big fan of his in college, and I've watched his entire career, and he's going to retire soon probably, and I will have seen it all.
Well, let me put it this way. BG was drafted in my, let me do some quick math here, 23rd year covering the Eagles, and he's about to retire after 15 years. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. But, yeah, he's a fun player.
All right. I have Demario Davis written down. Gosh, he's still really good. He's 35.
Is that right?
He looks like one of the best linebackers in the league. You would never believe he's 35 years old. He shows no signs of slowing down.
Yeah, I had no idea. He has been around a long time.
He's everywhere, too. Like, you turn on Saints tape, he's all over the field.
He probably didn't make his first Pro Bowl, too. He was like 32, right?
He was much older. Yeah, he had an all-pro year before he made the Pro Bowl. One of those guys who, like, people saw it before the big recognition came.
Yeah, certainly a guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, well on his way to a 3rd straight Pro Bowl. Now, and then it's not like the Saints have great edge rushers, but Carl Granderson, Chase Young, and they still have Cam Jordan there. Wow. Been there for a long time. So good tests for Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. But we've done so much on this podcast highlighting the bad with the Eagles.
Yeah, go ahead.
Their offensive line's been tremendous.
It has. I was just about to say, I think you have to double check this. I believe that Cameron Jordan has the longest streak in the NFL of consecutive starts now that Kelsey, or he might have had it before Kelsey. He started something like 200 some odd consecutive games. Cam Jordan, all for the Saints. He was drafted in 2011. Anyway.
And it is funny because he's still starting for them, but he's playing fewer snaps.
Yeah.
So he's 3rd in terms of snaps for their edge players, but they still put him out there to start games.
Yeah.
And he's still playing well. It's not like he's not the guy he once was, but he's still solid.
Been a really good player for a long time.
Certainly has.
7 Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm. And then Devontae Smith.
8 Pro Bowls, I'm sorry.
Devontae Smith is going to have a lot on his shoulders in this game. It still looks like no A.J. Brown, so he's the top receiving option. I think Marshawn Lattimore is probably going to be back for this game. He missed week 2, and they were fine without him, honestly. The rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry stepped in and played really well.
He played well. Yeah. He's going to be a good player.
I think so. He was someone that we did a lot of work on because we thought he was a possibility for the Eagles. And honestly, if the draft had gone differently and the cornerbacks came off the board earlier, I don't think he would have been a bad pick at 22.
Not at all. No.
Yeah, I like him. He ended up going a little later than that, right? He went in the 2nd round.
I think he did, yeah.
Kind of much later, around 41st overall. Might have gotten a good player there.
Yeah.
That's all I had. I'm not ready for New Orleans and the loudness of that stadium.
It is.
It's one of the few open air press boxes.
I have something for you.
Those earplugs. Oh, yeah. I really, honestly, will take those.
Yeah, some. They were giving them out at the Dinosaur Jr. concert.
Thank you. I know. I'm very serious. I'm going to take these with me.
Yeah, I got them for you.
Because I normally leave the Superdome with a headache.
I think the St. Louis Dome was the loudest I was ever in. Mm-hmm. Did you ever cover a game in that place?
No.
I think they piped in crowd noise in there.
Oh, you know what? Barrett was mentioning that on Huddle the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In that stadium?
It was mentioning some stadium where they piped in noise.
It was not
the Superdome is. I've told this story before, but a few years ago when the Eagles just got pummeled down there.
That 48-20 game.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, the it was after each touchdown they play when the Saints go marching in. By the end of that game, I never wanted to hear that song again.
We heard it. Yeah, we heard it like 15 times.
They kept playing it,
and after every extra point too.
Yeah, so every time they score anything, field goal, extra point, touchdown, they play it.
Safety, yeah.
So safety, yeah. I go back to the hotel and I go to the hotel bar and I order some food. I'm like at a little like high top, trying to get some work done, but also eating some dinner. It's kind of quiet in there. It's nice. I'm getting some work done. Only in New Orleans could this happen. A guy walks in with a trumpet and plays when the Saints go marching in, like from me to you, very close. And I was like, I'm going to wrap this up and go upstairs and finish my work.
Did you at least have running water?
I did. I like New Orleans. You're not a New Orleans guy. I like the city quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not a big New Orleans guy.
Yeah.
But I had some good times there.
Hard not to.
Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah. Had some good times. I was there. I covered a Super Bowl there. That's where I
Super Bowl's there again this year.
hung out with O.J. Simpson before he was O.J. Simpson. He was there at that.
You've always been a big fan of his.
What's that? That outdoor, that big outdoor bar. I can't think of the name of it.
In New Orleans?
Yeah, the giant.
A lot of bars in New Orleans.
Man.
More bars than people in New Orleans.
Huge in a quarter. I can't think of the name of it.
A bar in the French Quarter in New Orleans. Thanks for.
I really narrowed it down there,
yeah.
didn't I? But it was Super Bowl week, and it was Pat O'Brien's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Pat O'Brien's, and because I knew it was the same name as something else, and I was there. I was there with Phil Sheridan, who was at the Inquirer at the time, and OJ was there talking to everybody, and he was like, people were like, "Oh, Juice, you're the best. Love you, Juice." And he was like, "Yeah." I went up to him and I said, OJ, I just want to tell you, you're great in Capricorn 1.
Mm-hmm.
Movie reference from Rube.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't happen much, and he loved that.
Yeah. And then you guys remain close.
We bonded.
The rest of us,
we bonded over Capricorn 1. Really good piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, and you supported them through everything. All right, let's get
to that far.
Let's get to questions. Eagle-eye at NBCUni.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code and send us a question that way. I have a bunch here. I don't know if we'll get to all of them today, but we'll see how.
What's going to stop us?
Well, time. I've got places to be. First one up from Shane. What's up, guys? Hope to see Dave down in Tampa next week. Maybe by that time, this pass rush is a little bit better. But if not, do you think it would be a good idea to have Zach Bond mix in with the pass rushers and bring in Devin White as the Mike or the Will? Side note, don't count out Nolan Smith just yet. I believe he will turn around in the next couple of games.
Yeah, I haven't given up on a second-year guy. I haven't given up on him. We talked about Zach Bond as an edge. I don't think it's something you want to do too much of, but I mean, I think the guy that I want to see a little more of is Jalix.
See him at all? We haven't seen him yet.
Well, we saw him on special teams, but yeah, I'd like to. If this continues to be a problem, give him a shot.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Some juice
in a small limited role. See what he can do. Get him out there on a pass rush situation. And let him just. Yeah, I don't think you want him out there against the run.
No.
But, yeah, I don't hate that idea. And as far as, like, actually moving Bond to the edge and bringing in Devin White, who was inactive, I don't really see that as a solution. I think at times you can rush Bond. You can kind of do we talked about this already, but we can do those sim pressures and you can drop a Nolan Smith into coverage and have Bond rush. I think that's realistic.
And Nolan Smith's probably better in coverage than he is rushing the passer, so. That's some good value out of him there.
Gosh. All right. Well, next one is from Warren. Good day, fellas. This is probably a tough one to answer, but I'm genuinely puzzled by it after this horrific loss. But is Dallas Goedert a good player, or does Jalen legitimately not like him?
He's a good player. I mean, he's got a really good body of work over 6+ seasons. 6+ seasons. He's never really had that bust out season I kind of thought he would have by now.
The closest he got was 22.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Jalen, it's just not happening. I don't know why. I don't know if there's any one reason, but you'd like to see him involved more. I mean, he's a really good weapon, and he's tough after the catch and gets open. There's no reason he shouldn't have 6 catches Sunday in New Orleans.
Yeah, and there's probably more factors with when or a tight end doesn't get the football or get the targets as a receiver,
Right.
And he's still impacting the game as a blocker.
Sure.
He is a good blocker, so he can still help when he's not catching the ball. But you'd like to see a more concerted effort to get him involved, especially now. This week is a better test. Last week, AJ got hurt during the week. A lot of the game plan's already in. You have to kind of scramble. This week, they pretty much know he's not going to play. So, yeah, figure out a way to make sure that Dallas is a primary on some plays and get him the football a little bit.
Agree.
All right, next question here is from Sharon. Greetings, longtime listener of the podcast. I have an observation and would like your take.
Thank you.
You both repeatedly mention that the other players on the offense need to step up and make plays. Example, Dotson, Goddard.
I never use the word step up.
Etc. My question is, how can others step up and make plays on offense when they're never targeted? It seems as if Hurts only looks for wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and when neither are open, he scrambles. Why can't he step back and go through his progressions? I feel as though the problem lies with Hurts not being able to read the play. If other teams double up Brown and Smith, Jalen will just take off and run. Thoughts?
Well, I think you're overstating it a little. I mean, Covey had 6 catches. I think if you're open, you're going to get the ball. I just think, you look at the weapons that he had on Monday night, and without AJ, I mean, you're looking at Johnny Wilson and you're looking at Dotson, who's just learning the offense, and Covey, who's, a nice player, but isn't going to put up huge numbers. And Paris Campbell. Well, who would you throw the ball? I would throw the ball to Devontae.
Yeah, I do think that sometimes he will force it to his guys a little bit more than he needs to.
Yeah.
And with him taking off, I think that's always like, look at this last game. The scrambling worked. I mean, their best touchdown drive, he accounted for 47 of the 70 yards scrambling. So with him, it's always going to be a fine line to figure it out. I'll go with the Carson Wentz term. It's always going to be a fine line to figure out exactly when he should take off. And I think early in his career, he was definitely guilty of that. Way too much. He wasn't trusting clean pockets. The first sign of anything, any little discomfort, he would put his eyes down and take off. I think he's gotten better with that. I think at times it does pop up.
Yeah.
But sometimes it works.
Yeah. Yeah. What were Goddard's numbers Monday night? We have 39.
3 for 38, I think.
3 for 38.
4 targets. The other one was one he wanted the penalty on. Maybe early contact.
And Calcaterra had 2 catches for 9. So again, 57 yards out of the tight ends. I mean, that's what you're going to get. My bigger issue is, and Saquon had 5 targets, 4 catches. I thought they were pretty balanced. 6 guys caught passes without AJ. Yeah, I'm not super concerned about that.
You mentioned Saquon. I was going to make a joke about what happened with that 5th target, but I talked to him this week. He said he's already moved on, which he should, but he also seemed to appreciate the support he got. He said just about everyone on the team came up to him and said, "Hey, we got your back. We trust you," which you kind of already know. He's a really good player, but I think it's always nice for him to hear it.
Yeah, especially being with a new team, new city. Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
He's gonna help this team a lot more than he's gonna hurt it.
Yeah, and he already has, honestly.
Yeah.
He's been really good.
He's really good.
Next question from Joe. I love the pod. You two are as real as it gets when discussing the birds without hyperbole. My question.
We're 100%.
Granted, the majority of the fan base has seemed very excited with Howie's moves. Me too. But with the benefit of hindsight, most of the recent ones, not including the last draft, seem to be off the mark a bit. Not a total disaster, but definitely concerning. Where should we rate Howie as a GM at this point? Your answer won't change my opinion of him, which is high, but it does seem like Howie has faltered a bit lately. Thanks and keep up the great work.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some misses, and it's probably a little too early to make any final conclusions about Huff or, Jordan Davis. He's in year 3, though. But yeah, a lot of these moves, especially on the defensive side, are looking.
The linebacker he brought in, not playing.
Devin White, not a high pick or a big money guy, but.
And then the guy he brings up to play situational edge rusher is like, oh no, he's actually the starting linebacker.
Yeah.
The Georgia players. Remember when it was like,
yeah,
just draft all these Georgia guys. It'll be great. And it hasn't really worked out like that.
Yeah. And
honestly, Georgia, as good as those defenses were, put out some weird prospects in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the moves, like Becton is great on the offensive side. You think of Saquon. I mean, the offensive moves I have no qualms with, but defensively recently, yeah, there's been a disturbing trend of misses, and every GM has them. I think overall Howie's a really good GM and has a good staff. There's been a lot of changes on the staff too, and I think that might be something that plays a part in this. They've lost a lot of really good scouts over the years who got promoted to, with other teams.
Mm-hmm.
But it is concerning. And then, I think when you look at Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Nolan Smith, the idea was that they were going to be the next generation of the D-line. And you throw Huff in there as a younger guy in the post-BG Fletcher world. I don't see any of these guys coming near replacing Fletch and BG, and that's a problem.
Yeah, even a lot of the talk in training camp was BG saying, hey, 90 and 98, those are the guys who are going to have to lead us this year and then take over.
Yeah.
Not off to a great start.
No.
Next question from Justin. I've almost never disagreed with you guys until the competitive advantage thing. I think you guys are 100% wrong. Is it annoying that Nick gives us nothing? Sure. And I know as a beat reporter, you probably don't like it, but it's legit. You don't think other teams have people combing through interviews, pressers, and any information they can get to one-up their opponents? I do. Again, I understand why you guys don't like it, but it's the right call. It's about risk management. There's more risk to disclosing than holding back. Love you guys in the pod. Go Birds.
Well, my issue is when it reaches the point of absurdity, like not confirming that Mekhi Becton is the right guard and not Tyler Steen, who's been hurt since day 3 of camp. If you don't want to tell us who's getting first team reps at some position that we don't know about, that's fine. I don't mind that. None of it bothers me. It's just I just think when it gets to the point of absurdity, and we know Mekhi Becton's the starter, you can admit it. Everybody knows it. The Falcons know it. The Packers know it. Well, obviously the Falcons know it because he just started the opener, but you know what I mean. So that's when I think it's kind of comical, but it doesn't bother me. I just think it's stupid.
Yeah, I think it's silly in some of these cases, and I agree that there's certainly things that he should not divulge, but he takes it to these extremes that a lot of coaches don't. The Becton one was probably the best example because then it put Becton in a really awkward spot.
Yeah,
if the guy's been the starter every day in training camp since day 3. We know what the deal is. And then he's being asked about, not even are you the starter, but just he's got to be so careful with everything he says. And it's the Packers know that was silly. He's so guarded with the injuries. I understand that to a certain extent, but there are a lot of good coaches who aren't as guarded, and it doesn't seem to bother them very much.
Yeah. I mean, Andy Reid's got the trainer coming out with a plastic mock-up of an ankle. This is the problem here. Yeah,
I just think that he thinks it helps more than it does.
Fair. Yeah.
But hey, it's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Next question from Connor, and we talked about this, but this is a good question.
And I would say this, excuse me. Did it bother? Was that Justin's question?
Yes.
When Vic says before the opener, Quignon's going to play, he's going to be on the field every down. Did that bother you? Did you feel like Vic gave the Packers too much information? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. Yeah. Didn't seem to matter, but you could look at it from the perspective of the Packers know now they're not getting ready for I guess Isaiah Rodgers ended up being hurt, but they're not getting ready for another guy outside.
And the thing about injuries, you got to put out an injury report at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're putting out reports during the week, but you're getting the statuses at the end of the week. So teams don't need us to tell them who's hurt and who's not hurt.
Next question from Connor. Hey guys, longtime listener from Idaho. Are we at the point of worry in the edge rushers where we give Jalix Hunt a few snaps?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm almost there.
He's been, in camp, he was better than I thought. He was a little more, I would say polished, but a little more NFL ready. A guy who played at Houston Baptist or Christian, whatever it is this week.
They haven't gone back. It's still Houston Christian.
Houston Christian.
They became more inclusive, remember?
That's right. So considering his background,
I mean, the Methodists have money too. Let's get him in here.
Houston Wesleyan. I'm ready to see him out there.
Last question here from Richard. This may initially sound like an absurd question, but at this point, I would contend it isn't as absurd as it seems. Milton Williams was drafted in the 3rd round of 2021. As things currently stand, he's eligible for free agency after this season. Jordan Davis was drafted in the 1st round of 2022. As things currently stand, he's eligible for free agency after next season, or they can pick up his 5th-year option, extending him through 2026. Considering all factors, past performance, projected improvement, confidence of growth, snap versus cost production ratio, etc., who has the better chance of being on the roster in 2026 and 2027?
I love roster management for 3 years from now. But it's an interesting thing to think of. I still think Jordan Davis has a higher ceiling than Milton Williams, and I like Milton. Do you disagree with that?
Thinking about it.
Starting to wonder. Year 3, he should be ahead of where he is. And, once in a while you see you see a nice rep from him. There's just not enough of them. I don't know. I will say more likely that Jordan's on the roster.
Yeah, I'm still going Jordan Davis because it's a lot harder to find a 350-pound nose tackle who, in theory, could affect the game in that type of way.
Yeah, Milton
and have the upside. But it's really valuable to have a 3-tech who can rush the passer.
Yeah.
So I think both there's a chance. But just the fact that Jordan has one more year on his contract, I'd take that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. It's a good question, though.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun to do. Thanks for all those questions, guys. If you have one, reminder, you can send it to us, eagle-eye at NBCUni. That's NBCUNI.com. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll leave that up there for another few seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's gone. This is where I remind you guys that if you enjoy the podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, I'm not going to make you give me a score, but which way you leaning with this prediction?
I just don't have enough faith in. I think they can score some points down there, but I don't have faith in the defense to hold the Saints down to a manageable total. I don't think they're going to score in the 40s, but I think they're going to score in the low 30s, and just not sure the offense is ready to go, drive for drive against that offense right now. So I'm going to go Saints by about a touchdown.
I'm very tempted to pick the Eagles.
Okay.
Just kind of a zag move.
Yeah.
But I'm not fully sold on the Saints.
Sure.
I think for me, ultimately, it's going to be really hard to pick the Eagles just because of how poorly they've played. But I might want to make a statement that I'm not really sold on the Saints after 2 games.
You feel free to make that statement.
That wouldn't make you nervous? And also the line is telling me a little something there.
The line's weird.
It's a weird line.
I don't really ever understand how they come up with those numbers. But hopefully it's a competitive game. I think it will be. I think the Eagles can play better in so many areas. It's just the run defense scares me. That matchup between, the Saints running game, just those weapons. The Eagles have played so poorly on defense. I just don't know if they're ready to just turn it around all of a sudden on the road on a short week against that offense on that field.
Tough place to play.
Yeah.
Thank you for my earplugs.
Yeah.
I will put those to good use at the Superdome.
You're going to need them.
You got any final words here?
No, have a safe trip. We'll be doing a podcast after the game when it's still light out.
I know. The 1:00 game is a beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah, I don't take those for granted.
You'll be able to have like a normal dinner somewhere in New Orleans.
Yeah, with a guy playing trumpet in my face. All right, that's all we have today. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you after.